I lost my soulmate, and somehow, the world kept moving, the sun still rose. People still laughed. Cars still passed by your window. Messages still arrived on phones. Somewhere, someone was celebrating a birthday, someone was falling in love, someone was making plans for tomorrow, while you were standing inside a silence so deep that even your own heart seemed afraid to speak. You looked at the place where they used to be, and for one brief second, your mind almost convinced you that they would walk through the door again. Then reality returned, and that was the moment everything inside you broke all over again. Because losing your soulmate is not simply losing a person, it is losing the future you imagined with them. It is losing the conversations you thought you would still have, the places you planned to visit, the ordinary mornings you thought would become memories one day, the little arguments you never imagined you would miss, the sound of their voice calling your name, and all those invisible promises you carried quietly inside your heart. You did not just lose someone, you lost a version of tomorrow. And perhaps that is why you have been struggling to understand why you still feel them, why their memory appears when you least expect it, why a song can suddenly stop you in the middle of a room, why a familiar scent can make your heart race, why certain places still feel sacred, why you sometimes wake from a dream and, for a few seconds, forget that they are gone. And perhaps the strangest part is this: you have tried to move forward. You have told yourself that you are stronger now. You have smiled when people asked if you were okay. You have said, "I'm fine," even when your heart was silently screaming for an answer. You have tried to accept what happened. But deep inside, there is still a question you have never been brave enough to ask. What if losing them was not the end of what they awakened? Inside you, what if the love you experienced was meant to change you in ways you could not understand while you were living it? What if the story was never only about keeping them, what if it was also about discovering who you were through loving them? That question may hurt at first, because when you love someone deeply, you naturally believe that love means staying, you believe love means forever. You believe that if something feels destined, it should never disappear. But life sometimes teaches you something much harder. Some people enter your life and stay. Some people enter your life and transform it. And some people leave behind a piece of themselves so powerful that even after they are gone, you are never exactly the same. Again, you remember the first time you realized you loved them. Maybe it was not dramatic. Maybe there were no fireworks. Maybe it happened in the smallest moment. A look, a conversation, a laugh, a silence that somehow felt comfortable. Something about them made you feel seen, not admired, not entertained, seen, as though they could look beyond the version of you that you showed everyone else, as though they somehow noticed the wounds you tried to hide. And maybe that was what frightened you, because being truly seen is beautiful, but it is also terrifying. When someone reaches the hidden places inside you, they gain the ability to touch parts of you that nobody else has ever reached. And when that person leaves, those same places become the places where you feel the emptiness most deeply. You may have asked yourself hundreds of times what went wrong. You replay conversations, you remember their last words, you examine their expressions, you wonder whether you could have said something differently. You wonder whether you should have stayed longer, called sooner, loved harder, forgiven faster. You search the past as though somewhere inside those old moments there is a secret door that could take you back. But the past does not open simply because you are hurting. And that may be the lesson you were never prepared to learn. You cannot heal by constantly trying to rewrite yesterday. You heal when you finally understand what yesterday came to teach you. And there is something your pain has been trying to tell you for a long time. You are still here. That matters. You survived mornings you thought you would never survive. You survived nights when your thoughts became unbearable. You survived the empty side of the bed. You survived the silence after the last conversation. You survived seeing places that once belonged to both of you. You survived the moments when you wanted to reach for your phone even though you knew there would be nothing waiting for you. You survived the days when everyone expected you to be normal again while your heart was still trying to understand what had happened, and nobody saw all of it, but you did. You know how many times you had to pull yourself together. You know how many tears you wiped away before anyone noticed. You know how many times you whispered, "I just need to get through today." And somehow, you did. But there is something you may not realize yet. The person you became after losing them is not the person you were before meeting them, and that change may be the hidden meaning behind everything. Perhaps they awakened your capacity to love. Perhaps they showed you what tenderness felt like. Perhaps they revealed your deepest fears. Perhaps they forced you to confront the parts of yourself you had avoided for years. Perhaps their presence opened a door inside your heart that had been locked for a very long time, and perhaps their absence forced you to walk through that door alone. That is where your transformation began, not when you stopped missing them, not when you stopped crying, not when you stopped remembering. It began when you realized that your life could still contain meaning even though the person you once imagined beside you was no longer there. That realization may have been quiet. You may not even remember the exact day it happened. Maybe you simply woke up one morning and noticed that breathing felt slightly easier. Maybe you laughed without feeling guilty. Maybe you heard their favorite song and, for the first time, did not collapse beneath the memory. Maybe you looked at an old picture and instead of only feeling pain, you felt gratitude. And that tiny change was more important than you knew, because healing rarely arrives like thunder. Sometimes healing arrives as one peaceful breath, one quiet morning, one night without tears, one moment when you realize you are thinking about your future again, and perhaps you have been waiting for some enormous sign that you are finally healed. But maybe the sign is much smaller. Maybe the sign is that you are beginning to dream again. Not necessarily about another person. About yourself, about who you could become, about places you could go, about things you once loved, about the version of you that existed before heartbreak convinced you to make your world smaller. You may think moving forward means forgetting your soulmate. It does not. Moving forward means remembering without destroying yourself. It means honoring what was without allowing what was to imprison what could still be. Because love should never become a grave where your future is buried. And yet, there is another mystery you may still be carrying. You may wonder whether they ever think about you, whether they remember, whether they regret, whether they look at the night sky and Wonder where you are, whether they ever feel that strange ache when something reminds them of you. You may never know the answers, and that uncertainty can be painful, but sometimes the soul asks questions that life refuses to answer immediately. Maybe because the answer is not meant to come from another person, maybe the answer is meant to come from within you. There was a reason their presence mattered. There was a reason your paths crossed. There was a reason your heart recognized something in them. But destiny is not always about possession. Sometimes destiny is about transformation. Sometimes someone enters your life for a season and leaves you carrying lessons that remain for decades. Sometimes a relationship becomes the doorway through which you finally meet yourself, and perhaps that is what happened to you. You thought you were searching for your soulmate, but somewhere along the way, you discovered the soul you had been neglecting inside yourself. The soul that needed forgiveness, the soul that needed patience, the soul that needed to believe it was worthy of love even without someone standing beside it, the soul that needed to understand that being abandoned does not mean being worthless, the soul that needed to learn that someone's departure does not determine your value, and that lesson may become one of the greatest gifts hidden inside your heartbreak. You still miss them. You are allowed to. You still love parts of them. You are allowed to. You still wish things had been different. You are allowed to. You can be healing and still miss someone. You can be moving forward and still look back. You can be grateful for the memories and still wish you had more. Healing is not betrayal. Letting go is not saying the love was meaningless. It is saying the love mattered so much that you refused to let its ending destroy the rest of your life. And maybe tonight, you need to hear something your broken heart has been waiting for. Your story is not over. Not because someone is guaranteed to return. Not because the past is guaranteed to repeat itself. Not because you should spend your life waiting for a particular person. Your story is not over. Because you are still becoming.